It's amazing how good this school is. Look at all the press you've attracted. Their interest in community colleges impressed me greatly, and I hope that's what they're going to write about. But
probably not. Vice President Joe Biden there joking with all the press coverage at a community college event he was speaking at. Vice President Biden spoke at Miami-Dade College's North Campus. It was billed as an education speech, but the Veep talked about immigration, the economy, and infrastructure. And earlier, we spoke with Steve Schale from the Super PAC Draft Joe Biden. Why do you and the Biden supporters want the vice president to run?
Well, first of all, personally, I just like the vice president a lot. I think he represents the kind of politics that we all want more of in this country, a guy who puts sort of people above politics. You know, he's one of the few people in Washington who's universally respected. And frankly, in this time in our country's sort of great division, I think he's a guy that can unite people and get things done.
You know, there is a poll out that shows that 38% of Democrats polls that they would vote for the vice president if it appeared that polling showed that Hillary Clinton might lose to a Republican. But how concerned are you and others that a Biden candidacy could divide the Democratic Party?
I'm not concerned about it at all. I mean, frankly, I was a state director in Florida after the most brutal Democratic primary we've had probably in history. And frankly, we benefited by the fact that we had two campaigns, both Obama and Clinton, out organizing. We were able to unify the family very quickly and be able to do some things that were pretty remarkable only because there had been two campaigns organizing. So I think that Joe Biden getting in the race, even if he's not the eventual nominee, would be very good for the party.
Yeah, a lot of people have a great deal of affection for the vice president on both sides of the aisle. But let's sort of look at some of the history here. I mean, back in 1988, he was forced to quit the race then because over concerns of plagiarism. Back in 2008, he dropped out after a fifth-place finish in Iowa with less than 1% of the vote. Are there any concerns that the vice president has the legs to get to the finish line?
Listen, I think it's a very different time. I mean, who among us isn't very different than we were 28 years ago, first time the vice president ran? And frankly, in 2008, all due respect to the vice president, I mean, he was in a race with a bunch of rock stars between Hillary Clinton and Barack Obama and John Edwards at that time. There wasn't a whole lot of oxygen for him in that race, I don't think. I think it's a different time in our country's history. I mean, clearly, as the president has said, arguably the most consequential decision he's ever made was picking the vice president. He's been involved in pretty much every major legislative accomplishment of this administration. And I think if we're looking for somebody to carry on that agenda going forward, he's really positioned better than anybody else is.
And, sir, have you spoken to the vice president about the emotional toll that this could take should he decide to run for the presidency? I mean, this is a man who's gone through a lot of great personal tragedy. And as you well know, having worked for the Obama campaign in Florida, the run for the presidency is quite brutal.
It is. I have not spoken to the vice president really since the last re-election. I got swept up on the Super PAC side pretty quickly, so I'm sort of actually walled off from the official side. And listen, I think the vice president's got to go through his own process. And if he decides in the end that not running is the right thing to do, then I'll totally support that. Our job really is to go out there and make sure that if he does make the decision to run, there's some infrastructure in place, there's some donors that have been identified, and give him a good foundation, at least in the early states, to get off the ground. For example, today we just announced hiring of 4 staffers in South Carolina who will begin talking to folks and hopefully getting people excited about a potential vice presidential run, if he decides to get in.
Democratic strategist Steve Schale, thank you so much for being with us, sir.
Hey, Vlad, enjoyed it.
Thank you.